So Nas has called Kendrick Lamar the North Star of hip hop. A lot of folks are up in arms about it. Like, why does he get called the North Star? What's the significance? And some of you may know the North Star was a guiding point for slaves trying to escape, particularly through the Underground Railroad during slavery times in the 1800s. Most notably, songs like Follow the Drinking Gourd, which were about, the Big Dipper, which they called the Drinking Gourd in code, which features the North Star for some direction of where to leave, how to leave, right? So there's a lot of historical significance in calling someone like Kendrick the North Star. Nas, the historian he is, of course, knows all about this history, I'm sure, which is why he chose that term specifically. This is not just saying that he's a guiding light, but that he is a means to freedom. Maybe some folks feel like it's not true. Maybe Kendrick's not the North Star, but let's break down. Does his opinion matter? Yes, of course it matters. It's Nas. He is arguably the greatest MC of all time by pretty much any standard or any list. Yes, you've got your J fans, you've got your Kendrick fans and your M fans and your Pac fans and Biggie fans, but none of those lists feel complete without Nas very close or to the top or at the top. Let's be honest. Nas has a couple of the best albums ever put out in hip hop, right? We've got Illmatic, debut album, only 9 actual songs on it. Still considered to this day maybe the best hip hop album ever put out. It was written, though more commercial. Some argue is even better than Illmatic, and lyrically, I think there's a strong case for that. I don't know that the album itself has the same atmosphere and feel to it. It's a little longer, right? But it is a very comparable project in many ways as far as quality. So if Illmatic is considered one of the best albums of all time, and It Was Written is arguably just as good, if not better, then we have to consider It Was Written as one of the best albums of all time. Now, to put 2 of the best albums of all time out back to back like that hasn't been done much, right? And then there's other albums. People will shit on I Am, but the original I Am, as it was intended to be released, is fire. Nostradamus, while there are some misses on the album, it is not a complete fucking dud. Hip Hop is Dead gets a lot of flack, but it is his most creative venture to date. Nas, it has an important catalog himself, right? Life is Good, a mature album coming out in, I think, 2012 or whatever it was sort of the precursor to 444 and maybe a Mr. Morale and some of these other more mature albums that we've gotten since. Let's not forget that Life is Good was the first one out the bunch. He's continued to innovate late in his career with Hit Boy, 6 albums, right? Um, I would say 2 of them, King's Disease 3 and Magic, are arguably top 5 albums of his whole career. That's unheard of at 50 years old to be putting out that type of quality. So when someone like Nas says something like this about Kendrick, we should listen. I mean, in my opinion, we should listen. Since when do we not listen to Nas? Whenever you're hearing something, right, you have to check your sources. And we've checked our source, and Nas checks out. The source checks out. He is hip hop. He embodies hip hop. He helped carry crates to the park when he was a little kid before he ever started spitting, right? He's been a part of hip hop his entire fucking life. So the problem is that when people criticize Nas's criticism, or Nas's assessment, I should say. When you criticize Nas's assessment of Kendrick, you're actually criticizing Nas's place in hip hop, like he doesn't know what he's talking about. So let's get that out the way. So first of all, if you disrespect Kendrick by saying he's not the North Star, or at the very least that Nas shouldn't say that about Kendrick, you're disrespecting Nas on top of Kendrick. Why would Nas say it? is the question. Why wouldn't I say it? Well, let's compare them. Maybe because uh, Kendrick is the first commercially viable, though not as big of as a Drake, and I understand that. But Kendrick is the first commercially viable artist in hip hop in a very long time that has been able to balance lyricism, content, substance, playful flows. Sometimes you get trap beats, innovative musicality, right? All over the place. Every album is different. Um, he's been able to bridge that gap. And that's something Nas tried to do before. Nas never cared that much about being mainstream or commercial, but Uchiwali exists, right? Uchiwali does exist. So the question becomes, what does it mean specifically, right? In reference to Kendrick being the North Star. If the North Star is indicative of freedom, right, or representation of freedom, I should say, then we have to consider that we must be chained, right? If if Kendrick is the guiding light to freedom, then we must therefore not be free. And I think that by saying that Kendrick is North Star, Nas is implying that hip hop is still not in the best place. I saw someone else online mention that Nas, I think it was Company Man. I can't remember because I watched a few people cover this before I decided to speak on it. 'Cause I've been sick a lot and I haven't been able to cover anything really the way I want to. But I have been watching. And anyway, was talking about how Nas's hip hop is dead years ago. It was a sort of similar declaration to Watch the Party Die. And I thought that that was a fitting analogy. I was around for Hip Hop is Dead. I'm 35 years old. So I was actually heavy into Nas, catching up on all the old back catalog and really just falling in love with the music when Hip Hop is Dead actually came out. So I was more excited than probably anybody in the whole world because I had just discovered Nas, like as far as like his actual catalog going back. I didn't know Nas's catalog before that. So I was like 16, 17 years old. And I had only heard like I Can, Uchiwali. Like I heard this stuff on the radio. This is before I was really tapped in. When Hip Hop is Dead came out, I remember Jeezy and some other Southern artists being really pissed off about it because they were saying that, Nas's statement was directed at them, and it was, I think, on some level. But you look back later, and there's an interview I saw with Nas, and Nas said that he didn't regret putting out Hip Hop is Dead, but his opinion had changed, and that he didn't feel like it had died, but he had come to realize that in the very beginning, there was a degree of entertainment in hip hop before it ever went conscious. And it was very dance oriented. And it was maybe a bit superficial on the surface on some level. So, for him, he was talking about like hip hop going back to that and how like there needed to be a balance, he felt like, where it didn't have to always be conscious and super serious, but it didn't always have to be so playful. And that he had come to a sort of a more well-grounded opinion about it, well-rounded and grounded opinion about it. And I thought that was super insightful on Nas's end. I don't remember that interview off the top of my head. If any of you remember, you can comment that in the comment section, and I will go back and rewatch that actually. Kendrick has attempted to actually say something about the state of hip hop. He has attempted to call out hypocrites. In fact, he's been calling out hypocrites since Blacker the Berry on To Pimp a Butterfly. He says, I'm the biggest hypocrite of 2015. We're still there, right? We're all hypocrites. And Kendrick knows this. Nas knows this. Nas has been hypocritical. Kendrick can be hypocritical. We can all be hypocritical at times. It's not being defined by a specific trait rather than ignoring that it exists. It's okay to possess a certain thing, right? You could be hypocritical today. That doesn't make you an outright hypocrite. It means you had a moment of hypocrisy, of weakness, because you're human. And I think that the human element is what we get from Kendrick that Nas has been looking for in hip hop for a long time. It's his ability to connect with people while still keeping it hip hop. It's his ability to articulate very complex ideas about real issues in the world in a seemingly superficial, simple way. Sometimes Kendrick uses very basic language or even broken language, but this is done intentionally. And you can tell because when you listen to his catalog throughout its entirety, you hear the difference in approach to every song and every album. Sometimes he writes in a more sophisticated way. Sometimes he writes more loosely. Sometimes he does a lot of internals. Sometimes he does a lot of metaphors. He switches the style of writing up based on what he thinks the song calls for. And if you don't understand that that is elite, elite, elite level songwriting, then you don't know what songwriting is. Many people can't write a song. Many people who can write a song can only write a type of song or only have a very specific voice. When you learn to write in English, say, right? And you're learning, the anatomy of a short story or a novel and the anatomy of storytelling itself. These same elements are present. When you read a novel, right? A writer has developed what they call a voice over a period of years, which comes from just honing their craft. And it's just the way that they put their sentences together. Do they start off with a short, choppier sentence to make some sort of declaration, and then they fill it and flesh it out, the paragraph, and then they sort of round it out? Or is it more staccato? And maybe the dialogue, instead of being contained in one paragraph, is line after line after line after line to keep the reader going, right? To keep the reader locked in and to keep the pace up, right? These are different techniques that writers use. And once they find the techniques that work for them, they put these techniques together, and that is their voice. Kendrick has a unique ability to write with different voices. And then he uses his vocal ability to take these voices that he wrote and act them out in whatever emotional capacity they call for, like in You when he's drunk on To Pimp a Butterfly, right? That type of artistry is rare in any type of music, in any medium. Most painters, right, have a style of painting that they do. You look at Van Gogh. Go look at a Van Gogh painting, and then go look at another Van Gogh painting. Unless you're looking at from very, very different periods of an artist's life, and in Van Gogh's case, there weren't that many periods. When you look at their work, you notice that they developed sort of a voice, right? Picasso had a very specific way he painted. He developed a style, right? When you see a Picasso, you know it's a Picasso. When you see a Van Gogh, you know it's a Van Gogh. When you hear a Kendrick song, you know it's a Kendrick song. The difference is that he has fiddled with so many different techniques and styles as a creator that he could do a Van Gogh, and then he can do a Rembrandt, and then he can do a Picasso, and he can do a Da Vinci. He could do whatever he wants to do. He could go wherever he wants to go because he's got all the tools, right? He's got all the tools he needs, the skills to paint whatever music he wants to paint. I don't know that we've ever seen anyone in hip hop with that ability. And I think Nas sees that. I think Nas is the only one that you could compare him to, because while Nas may not have the different flows and the different voices that a Kendrick has, the creative genius is just as, if not even more present than in Kendrick's case, with songs like I Gave You Power or Rewind. Even lesser known songs like Project Roach or the Untitled album. These are really super highly conceptual songs. Hip Hop is Dead is a conceptual album, so he can do that. Nas's ability is not so much putting a bunch of multis together or the flyest metaphor. He can do that stuff when he wants to. What Nas's genius is pure creative genius, and it comes out through imagery. He's able to describe things in very acute detail, and it's almost like it's meaningless detail, but when you put it in context with a song, it puts you in a certain place mentally. He puts you where he's at visually in his mind through song, and lets you live sort of vicariously through him that way. And Kendrick does this as well. And I think that's the correlation. I think that they're both high-level conceptual thinkers. I think that Nas never fully blossomed into the conceptual artist he wanted to be. I think because he was forced to be, in a cookie cutter sort of environment through, label stuff for a while. And I wonder, there's a certain industry structure that I think he had to adhere to. There's the chorus and the bridge and the verse and they like things a certain way. As his career went on, he got further and further away from formula and started just doing what he wanted to do. I think that's what makes Magic, King's Disease stuff, that's what makes it so great. Like, you could tell he was just doing what he wanted to do. Hit Boy was like, oh, you want to do this? Well, this is what we're going to do. Because he doesn't have these restrictions anymore. And Kendrick came into the game without those restrictions. He was under TDE, and they let him grow. Section 80 is basically a concept album. He's writing from different perspectives of different people. Section 80 is a better written album than 80-90% of artists at any point in their career. Let's be honest. In the same way, Nas is Illmatic is just better writing, better crafting than the majority of anything anybody else has ever put out since. So I think when Nas talks about Kendrick being the North Star, and we reference the North Star as a representation of freedom, I think that what he's saying is artistically, not just in content, but artistically, he is freeing us. He is freeing us from the industry standards. He is showing us that we don't need to just have one voice or one flow or one writing style or one sound or one anything. We could do literally whatever we want to do. Kendrick is, you can do whatever you want in human form. And if that is not freedom, if that is not a North Star, if that is not a drinking gourd to follow, I don't know what is. Thank you sincerely for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. The algorithm for YouTube is all disrupted right now. I need all the likes, subscriptions, watch time I can get to try to grow this channel. And I've been sick the last couple months, so I haven't been able to post as much. So please, if you enjoyed this content, I would greatly appreciate that.